Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Premier Football Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rafe Garland. Happy weekend, boys and girls out there. Happy Friday to all of you football fans, including the miserable Liverpool fans like myself. I'm joined, as always, by my good mate, who's in a surprisingly good mood today. Arsenal won midweek. Liverpool lost last night. Joe, how's life on the other side of the tracks?
On the other side of the N11, it's good, Rafe. I can't really complain. Been very busy with work, but that's a good thing. And my God, did we have a treat last night? Liverpool's, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 68 games, 69 games?
That was game 69, yeah.
That was game 69, unbeaten at Anfield, and they come unstuck against Burnley. Ashley Barnes penalty. What a crazy time Liverpool are in right now. And of course we'll get right into that, but it beggars belief that this time last year they were nailed on Premier League champions elect. Nailed on. I mean, they would have had to have a much worse run than this for them to have slipped up this time last year. But no goals in their last 4 games. And if Everton win one of their 2 games in hand, and if Spurs get a point in their game in hand, Liverpool will be 6th.
Yeah, they could start their next game 7th if West Ham play before them as well and win. We could be behind West Ham the next time we play football, which is a tough one to take. And look, man, I spent, as you might imagine, I spent a lot of time last night thinking about this, about how I was feeling. And about everything that was going on. And I suppose, man, it's just one of those things. I'm trying not to be too downbeat about it. Liverpool have had a phenomenal 2 or 3 years. And I'm not new to supporting the club. You know, I've supported the club since 2001 and I've seen it all in that time. You know, it's not the first time we've lost a game at home in the league. It's the first time in in 3, nearly 4 years that we have. Yeah, but we're still unbeaten. Or not unbeaten, we've still only lost 2 of the last 70 home Premier League games, which is still an incredible record. I think back to supporting Liverpool under Roy Hodgson, falling asleep watching them play for 0-0 draws away in the Europa League on a Thursday. And I mean, we've been absolutely blessed as fans with a squad that's overperformed over the last couple of years, with a manager who's treated us with brilliant football. And I've seen a lot of backlash on social media about the style of football that Liverpool are playing, or Klopp doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, it's just pure nonsense, really, isn't it? Like everyone's going to have a dip in form at some stage.
Well, it's interesting. I remember Liverpool going through those tough times, but they've always, in the back of your mind, every football fan knows the history of Liverpool Football Club, and I absolutely thought that following the Klopp revolution, because he did revolutionize the football club, and not just him, but the behind, the great work FSG did in the transfer market and appointing people like Michael Edwards, who has had such a big influence on Liverpool's transfer dealings in an overwhelmingly positive way. I just thought that the only way was up. Like, everyone knows it's so hard to retain the Premier League title, and I still think Liverpool will be in the mix. This is just a blip. I mean, can a team not have 4 or 5 bad results in a row? I mean, they've only lost one of those games, I think. The rest were draws.
To Southampton and Burnley.
To Southampton, yeah. So it's 3 draws and 2 losses in their last 5. It's not great, but it's not 5 losses in a row, and a win will put Liverpool back in the mix. But what I was going to say is that I did expect Liverpool to retain their title this year, and I did expect them to build a dynasty in the mold of what they had in the 70s and 80s, and they well still might, but it won't be this season that they do it.
I think a lot of people got a bit carried away on the back of Liverpool's first league win in 30 years. A lot of people felt like that league trophy was going to bring 10 league trophies. And I think a lot of people even took for granted that Liverpool would go on and win the Premier League this year, for almost forgetting that this ridiculously good Manchester City team are still around. United have been getting stronger and stronger over the last couple of years. And there's obviously a lot going on there. But Liverpool had been in three European finals in the 3 years previous to winning the Premier League, 2 Champions Leagues, and a Europa League final. And I mean, we did have 4 very, very good years of really entertaining, attractive football. And I suppose the other thing is the season, like you said, it's not over. You expect Liverpool to be up in the mix come the end of the season. And yeah, look, at this stage, obviously securing a Champions League spot for next year has to be the priority with so many good teams out there. But they're still in the Champions League and they've got quite a good draw against Leipzig. And that's a competition that Jurgen Klopp has shown that he's more than competent in him and more than capable of taking his team all the way. We expect to have Diogo Jota back in a few weeks, and it's looking like it could only be a couple of months until Virgil van Dijk is possibly back in the team as well. You think that fans might be back in the stadium come the end of the season, and you can actually see Liverpool finishing this season really, really strongly. And if they can hang on in there in as many competitions as possible, if they can beat United in the FA Cup this weekend, for example, if they can, string some sort of form together in the league and just stay in and around that top, and if they can get through their Champions League draw at the start of next month, suddenly February, March, April, there's a lot for Liverpool fans to be excited about, even if they're not guaranteed of winning the Premier League.
Yeah, there is, and everyone knows how difficult it is to retain. I think the only team in recent years who's retained the title is City. When Leicester won, obviously that was a once-off. Chelsea's 2 title wins in 2015 and 2017. They backed that up with a 10th place finish in 2016 and then a 5th place finish in 2018. So it is really, really difficult to retain the Premier League, and the competition. Those around Liverpool it's they've got stronger. I think to be fair to City, Ruben Diaz does look like a very good defender. We were not sold on him in the early part of the season because City weren't picking up results, but he's got through that difficult period, and he seems to have, interestingly enough, forged a very good defensive partnership with John Stones. And then, of course, Manchester United, to be fair to yourself, Rafe, you did predict that they would have a good season before it started.
I think I said they'd be second.
You did. Yeah. After they had a bit of a rocky start, and their transfer deadline day business, I think Cavani's been okay. He hasn't been fantastic. And I think people are getting a bit carried away with his praise against Fulham. Fulham are still not a great side. And I think he's only scored 4 in 12, which is 1 in 3. And for PSG and Napoli, he was almost a goal a game striker. So let's not get carried away. He's not doing anything special.
As well as the other teams getting stronger, and this is what Liverpool, I found out this year. And a lot of former pundits talked about it, and Liverpool fans and players seem to shrug it off. And you spoke about how difficult it is to retain the title. And that's because you're marked. You are a target for every other team in the Premier League. They all want to get one over the champions. Every time you go to play at the weekend, you are the team to beat. This is their cup final. And we've seen this year teams just sitting back against Liverpool, just putting 10, 11 men behind the ball saying, come and break us down. We're not going to get beaten today. Whatever you throw at us, we're not going to get beaten today. And we're going to fight for our lives not to go down today. And that's what they've run into over the last few weeks, a series of stubborn teams that just were not going to be beaten by Liverpool, and they've been done on the break a couple of times, undone by a couple of set pieces. Yeah, look, Liverpool have been performing, I would say, I don't think they've been playing badly. They've been performing 95% as well as they were last year, but because of how they don't play possession football or counter-attacking football. They play pure domination, and they were winning games by through pure intensity, and when you lose 5 or 10% of that intensity, then it's not possible to win every single game like that, because when the other team are upping their intensity every week to play against you, if you're dropping off even a little bit, you're leaving yourself open to problems, I think.
Yeah, of course you are. I mean, it all started with that Watford win at the back end of last season, and since then a lot of other sides have taken influence from that strategy that Watford have, is breaking Liverpool's high line. Obviously the best example of that since then is the 7-2 loss against Aston Villa, but Liverpool just don't look comfortable at the moment. I'd really like to know, and I just tried to Google, but I couldn't find it, what the table looks like since Liverpool had the league wrapped up.
Well, since lockdown is a fair measure, because they only lost their first league game, I think, the week before lockdown, and then they lost to Atletico a couple of days before the lockdown. But aside from that, they were flying up to that stage. So, maybe I'm sure there is a table. I'm sure Liverpool are actually quite far down it. I'd say Manchester United are top of that table, and Manchester City are probably second. But yeah, look, it's like I said, they've taken 5 or 10% off their own intensity, and the intensity of everybody they play has gone up. So what Liverpool have got to do is they've got to change their style of football. They've evolved so many times from that heavy metal counter-pressing, counter-attacking team to a much more defensive counter-attacking team, and then last year to this pure domination team where they bombarded the opposition boxes with crosses, and they played this ridiculously high line, and they penned teams into their own box. But that's not working anymore. They're just being given the ball and putting the ball into the corners and trying to heap crosses into the box against Burnley and Southampton. It isn't going to work. Sadio Mane isn't going to outjump Ben Mee. The Liverpool put 30 crosses into the box last night, and only 2 were successful. And I'm sure Trent Alexander-Arnold was responsible for more than half of those misplaced crosses.
And look at who you're playing up front as well. I mean, Origi might be just about. No, I don't even think he's 6 foot. I think he's 5'11". But none of your front three or attacking midfielders are above 6 foot. So
no, and look,
honestly,
Mane and Origi can head the ball. They're both good in the air.
Yeah, they can,
but they're not big, strong target men. And look, if that's how Klopp wants to play, if he wants to start pumping crosses into the box because that's where the space is in the corners, yeah, grand. But go out and sign Andy Carroll or Christian Benteke or anyone, you know, that's there to do that job.
But this is what I was going to say. Like, it's time that Liverpool. It's time for Klopp's second Liverpool team. If you get me, it's time for him to build his second team.
But I don't know that he needs to change so much. Sorry, Joe, but I mean, if he was to just he plays his 4-3-3, whatever it is, but he plays a midfield of Curtis Jones, Thiago, and Wijnaldum or something like that, and people that are comfortable on the ball, and we start encouraging Liverpool to keep the ball and not be so direct every time they turn it over. Every time they turn it over, they want to get in behind, but you cannot counterattack teams that sit deep. So if you're being given the ball, start looking after it and start looking to draw the opposition out and create holes and slip teams through. And I know he said that he doesn't want to be like Pep Guardiola playing a symphony because he likes heavy metal football, but that's not working at the moment. So he's got to adapt and do what he's done before so well.
But it's interesting you say that, because that's not the only style of play that they're trying to play, because they've brought in Thiago, and Thiago's trying to be a conductor, and he's an Andrea Pirlo type, Xabi Alonso type without the long passing so much. You get me? He's in the mold of a Pep Guardiola player. Obviously, Pep brought him to Bayern Munich from Barcelona, and
he obviously brought him through at Barcelona as well.
Yeah, and trying to fit him in to this Liverpool team is tricky, because he's not a heavy metal footballer, and because he did it for Bayern last year. Though his pressing stats were very good for a team that pressed more than any other team in Europe. He can do that. Yeah, but it's not really happening right now, and I'm not putting the blame at Thiago. I actually think that his passing has been very good. It's more that the team don't really know what to do with him in it. That they're still trying to play in the mold of Klopp's Liverpool, but with a ball playing central midfielder there instead of Jordan Henderson. It's a completely different style of number 6 that they're trying to play with right now, and it just seems that the rest of the players don't exactly know what to be doing, and it's especially the front three.
Yeah,
it should be very easy for Thiago to be playing balls for the front three, and the link up between them should. I actually think that he might be better operating a little bit higher up the pitch than.
I think we might see that
playmaker
when one of the defenders comes back and Fabinho or Henderson, whoever it is, can drop into that number 6 role. Then we'll probably see Thiago occupy that left side of midfield, and whoever it is, whether it's Oxlade-Chamberlain or Curtis Jones or whoever it is on the right side. And sorry, I've mentioned Curtis Jones twice now, and I'd want to say that I don't know what he's done to actually upset Jurgen Klopp. I don't know which member of his family he's poisoned, because he's been absent from the matchday squads for the last few weeks, and it correlates interestingly with Liverpool's dip in form. I think that he was actually probably our most consistent midfielder for the first part of the season. He was being tipped for an England call up for the Euros and all sorts of things, but he's fallen out of the team.
Well, he's brought Oxlade-Chamberlain back in, who's been rubbish. He's done absolutely nothing.
He brings he brings something different to the game. But I was interested to see that Gini Wijnaldum started yesterday, and obviously Gini's been absolutely fantastic for Liverpool. And I'm not suggesting that he's downed tools because he's leaving at the end of the summer, but he does look tired. He does look out on his feet, and he is leaving in 3 or 4 months. So if you've got a young guy who's the future of the club playing really, really well every time he puts on the shirt, and you've got somebody of the same standard that's leaving in 3 or 4 months, it doesn't make sense to me not to give game time to the future of the club.
I agree, and it's interesting about Wijnaldum. I do think that he's very good, and I do think it's unfortunate for Liverpool that they couldn't agree a deal with him. But it's not that Liverpool chose not to offer him a new contract, isn't it? Wijnaldum has decided not to.
Well,
they couldn't come to an agreement.
If Liverpool had offered a bigger contract, he may have stayed.
But there was a contract on offer, and he decided he would move on. I think that once. I'm thinking back to Aaron Ramsey, who was obviously very important for Arsenal. Arsenal offered him a contract, but then Arsenal took that away. But Ramsey maintained his professionalism. But I would say because Ramsey didn't ask to leave, Ramsey wanted to stay, but they couldn't quite. The contract was removed from him, so it's a slightly different situation.
We've spoken about Wijnaldum a little bit, and I think that some of the contract offers that he's been given, he would consider almost insulting when he sees the wages of some of the other players. And look, we don't want to.
Yeah, I would agree. We've talked about this a lot. Yeah.
But but the deal isn't working out. And look, fair play to Gini, and I still think he's maintaining his professionalism. But I'd like to see Curtis Jones play a few more games if he is moving on. And yeah, look, Liverpool can look after the ball a bit more. I also think that some players need a rest, need to be taken out of the team. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold, we spoke a little bit about him last week. He's not
absolutely
in absolutely
no he's not, and this is the thing. And I haven't seen too much of Newcastle.
Look, he's not to be scapegoated for either.
But who's even Liverpool's second choice right back right now?
Nico Williams or James Milner?
Nico Williams is not good enough. I mean, it's great that Klopp's putting. Sometimes you have to. I think that
I'd love to see Oxlade-Chamberlain play out there.
Yeah, good luck getting him to play there, but he would be that is a much better position for him than central midfield.
But he'd have so much space out there in a Jurgen Klopp team, he'd have the freedom of that right flank. And I know he moved to Liverpool because he wants to play centrally, but I mean
he hates it. He was forced to play right wing back for under Arsene Wenger, and he hated it.
He played almost on the right wing for Liverpool last night, and it was Shaqiri that actually operated as the central midfielder with Ox as part of the front three. So I don't know. I'm sure Jurgen Klopp has considered all of this, and I'm sure he knows. But look, there it is, and I'm really interested to see what type of team he puts out for obviously the massive FA Cup game this weekend against Manchester United.
Liverpool need to win that.
You're telling me, pal.
Yeah, that'll do Liverpool the world of good. Also, I think Liverpool should be trying to win the FA Cup as well. I feel like Klopp slightly disrespects the FA Cup. He doesn't put it on a. But I know that it's not the Champions League or the Premier League, but it's a bloody good competition to win. I think
he has done it in previous years, but he put out a pretty strong squad against the Aston Villa under-18s last time round, and maybe that is a statement of intent.
I agree, and I think that if you're not going to retain the Premier League, challenging in the Champions League and winning the FA Cup is still a bloody good season following, because it's so difficult to retain the Premier League. Yeah. Like, especially the examples I've given about Chelsea, really falling away Leicester as well, really falling away the years after winning the Premier League. So for Liverpool to remain competitive and to then rebuild, it's not all doom and gloom. I do think just on one point, we have Roberto Firmino turning 30 in October. Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah are both 28, 29 as well. So I know Jota's 24. I do think that front three, I do think the Liverpool front three could be changed up. I do think that you'd be foolish not to be sniffing around Erling Braut Haaland, and to go down the route of a striker like that would be Liverpool have a great history of traditional number nines, man. You know that more than you know.
I'm
really
not
do.
going to argue with this. I think I definitely agree that we need a striker. We need someone that's going to play through the middle and put the ball in the back of the net, because we are crying out for a genuine number 9 right now. Especially if we're adamant on heaping crosses into the box. Why not have somebody in there that knows how to do the last bit?
Exactly. And I don't want to keep knocking Firmino, because I do think that there's a player there. He's just not playing in his right position anymore. But what was the game against Manchester United? There were 2 chances where if you had, I know Haaland is extremely good, but there are 2 chances where he had the ball on his left foot in a one just outside the box and one just inside the box. And like, if that's Haaland, everyone knows what the end result is.
No, mate, look, I definitely take your point. And even if they were to sign a striker, there's probably still a job for Firmino in the team somewhere as well. Or look, he can be a rotational player. Like you said, he's getting on, whatever it is. I want Liverpool to hang on to Mohamed Salah. He gets a lot of stick in the press, but his numbers every season are just ridiculous. In terms of chance creation, forward passes, successful dribbles, he outperforms Firmino and Mane almost on every statistic across the board every single season.
He's your best attacking player.
Of course,
and he has been since he signed for the club.
Yeah, he is. And look, they're negotiating a new deal with him now. He says it's in the hands of the club, but he is tied down, I think, until 2024 as it is. So there's no drama with Salah, and I think that he's the one that has to be kept sweet and looked after. And if they do bring in someone in the summer, it'll be up to Mane and Firmino to assess whether they want to stay and fight for a place, or whether they want to go and retire in La Liga or whatever it is. Yeah, look, man, let's move away from Liverpool a little bit, because there's been so much happening. Can I get a prediction for the FA Cup game first?
Yeah, I think Liverpool are going to bounce back.
Man, music to my ears.
I go with a 2-0 win
in Old Trafford.
Yeah.
Big.
United
I don't know where Liverpool are getting 2 goals from.
United haven't been great in Old Trafford this season, and I also fancy Arsenal to beat Man United next weekend.
Yeah, well, that'd 100%. Be great. That'd be great if you could do that first. I reckon Liverpool will win 1-0 with the ball deflecting in off Divock Origi's arse in the 93rd minute, and I'll be doing laps of this.
You'd be absolutely delighted with that.
Exactly. Well, look, mate, you mentioned Arsenal there. We do want to talk obviously about the teams at the top of the table as well. But quickly, I know you've been deprived for 2 shows now. They didn't get the result first time round. A 0-0 draw, but who was that against? Palace?
Yeah, that was against Crystal Palace.
And then obviously a comprehensive win over Newcastle.
Yeah, the game against Palace was just one of those where Palace are absolutely resolute, and Arsenal didn't show enough going forward, so it got to the stage where both sides accepted the draw, and that's fine. Crystal Palace are a bogey team for Arsenal. They haven't beat Crystal Palace since Wenger left, so I wasn't at all surprised that ended in a 0-0 draw. Keeping a clean sheet is still okay, and Arsenal are still in transition. The game against Newcastle was very good because Partey came back in and played a superb ball for Aubameyang, who found his goal scoring touch again after fluffing his lines in the first half. I don't know if you saw that chance he had in the first half. I couldn't believe it. I was a lot of Arsenal fans were calling for him to be hauled off at half time. Obviously he wasn't, and he scored a bag of brace in the second half. I know you were a bit.
He did snatch at his first goal a little bit, but look, they all count.
They all count, and I mean, when someone's been going through a rough time like that, like you've just said, for Liverpool, you just take a goal, any goal. And I thought it was a good finish with his left foot. Like he got himself into the penalty area from inside his own half and finished. But I mean, for me, the headlines need to be again pointed in the direction of Emile Smith-Rowe and Bukayo Saka. And Emile Smith-Rowe was just breezed into the side and shown up both Mesut Ozil and Willian, who obviously in the last year or so have been tasked with being that creative force behind the front three for Arsenal, and have done absolutely nothing. And he is just making the team tick.
His future will be quite interesting, actually, because Arsenal appear to have agreed a loan deal today for Martin Odegaard from Real Madrid.
That is an interesting one, and I'm very happy that Odegaard's coming in.
He obviously set La Liga on fire last year playing for Real Sociedad. He was probably the player of the league, and Madrid recalled him from his 2-year loan spell a year early. He played the first few games for Madrid this year, didn't quite work out, and they've opted to keep some of the bigger names starting in the team, but he does look like a phenomenal footballer.
Yeah, he does, and he can play anywhere behind the striker, can't he, as well? So coming in from the right, he's left-footed, and then as a number 10. But I mean, Smith Rowe has a history of picking up injuries, and he's only 20, and he's only just come into the side. So as much as I want him to be starting, and I think he needs to be starting, you can't be playing him every game. And I would say the same goes for Bukayo Saka, and they're young lads, like they're 19, 20. They've only just started their careers. The same goes for Trent Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool.
Yeah, 22.
He could do with a few games. You need to be able to rotate.
I know. Trent Alexander-Arnold is younger than Nathaniel Phillips.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Well, Nathaniel Phillips is almost our age.
No, he's 23.
Not quite. Yeah, he's 23. You get what I'm saying. No, so I'm very happy for Odegaard to come in. I think that's an exciting signing.
Arsenal within striking distance of Chelsea now, and only 7 points behind Liverpool.
This is the crazy thing. If City win their game in hand, they'll be 7 points ahead of Liverpool, and Arsenal will be 7 points behind Liverpool. So, as mad as it is, a top of at least a 5th place finish for Arsenal is not out of the cards yet. So,
and they're still in the Europa League as well. So there's a potential route to the Champions League if they can go the distance there.
Yeah, I just want to see consistency over the second half of the season. I want to see them really put that poor period to bed. This has been 5 games, so by no means are Arsenal out of the mud yet. Okay,
well, look, you spoke about Man City there.
Well, Rafe, I expect Manchester City to barring a serious upturn in form from Liverpool or Manchester United really surprising us. I do expect City to win the league.
Look, let's talk about the Aston Villa game for a minute, because it was a really tight game. Villa gave a brilliant account of themselves. There was that ridiculous offside decision. I don't know where you stand on that. The Tyrone Mings with, who was it, Rodri coming back from behind him from an offside position, but because Mings attempted to chest it down, he suddenly put him on. So it sounds like a rugby law or something, man. I don't know. It didn't look right to me.
But it's kind of got to the stage with the new rules where everyone's a bit confused.
But I don't even know if this was a new rule. I think that if there's no VAR, the linesman just puts his flag up there, you know? Yeah. Because he appears to be offside, but I suppose by the letter of the law, he's onside.
But this is it now with VAR. We are bound by the letter of the law, right? There's no.
Yeah, but I think we're discovering how many issues are in the letters of the law.
Yeah, is there
we're realizing how broken the offside law is and the handball law.
I was just going to say, is there an argument to say that we didn't really realize how stupid a lot of these rules were, especially handball and offside, and that with VAR it's just highlighted that, and that, that's a good thing, because maybe we can change them and make them a little bit more coherent and rational. But I mean,
understandable.
Yeah, I mean, when you're literally splitting hairs, I mean, someone, if I'm trying to think of a player if Willian, he's the first player that comes to mind, or David Luiz, who have big hair, or leaning forward, or someone like Jorginho Wijnaldum, who has a shaved head, is leaning forward. Willian or David Luiz could be offside just because their hair sticks out. I mean, these sort of things are outrageous. I think
they've got some sort of handle on the handball law in a way. What we were seeing at the start of the season was ridiculous, but there was a penalty shout last night where I think Trent whipped the ball into the box and it struck. Was it Ben Mee in the chest and the armpit kind of area, and it's the kind of thing we would have seen at the start of the season given for handball. Now look, I'm not having too much of a moan saying Liverpool should have had a penalty, but I think we've got to the stage where we're relaxing a little bit and we're not giving everything that strikes the arm as a penalty. So maybe the handball law is starting to take some sort of shape, but the offside is still ridiculous.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the old handball law.
The
That if it's a
deliberate.
deliberate handball,
Yeah.
because you can't. There are some situations where you can't. I mean, think about. Oh man, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are a plethora of dubious handballs in the early stages of the season where you were having lads take shots with other players like 6 yards away from them, and
Even you think
people
about the
jumping.
Champions League final a couple of years ago where Mane just chipped the ball up into Sissoko's hand from close range and obviously
Mm,
won the penalty and that
yeah,
ended up pretty much deciding the game. Mate, look, sorry,
yeah.
I don't know why I asked you about handball and VAR. That's not at all what I want to do with my Friday morning. People don't want to hear about it. Manchester City look very, very good. Even without a
Mm.
striker, we said this last week, they just keep going. They're so defensively strong. Let's talk a little bit about Manchester United because we wanted to have a discussion or at least a conversation
Well,
about Paul Pogba.
yeah, we seem to disagree a little bit on Pogba, um, in the sense that I rate him highly and think that he's been doing a lot, and you're not quite convinced. I think the fact that he was asked to to not really play a Paul Pogba type of game against Liverpool is why um you said that he didn't really have a good game. It
No,
wasn't. Manchester United did not set up to let Paul Pogba have freedom of the pitch against Liverpool, nor should they have done. That would have played into Liverpool's hands, and they just don't have the sort of defensive midfielders to be. They don't to be able to allow him to play like that against a team like Liverpool, which is fine. They have to make do with what they do have, and he was asked to put in more of a shift in that game. But against Burnley and against Fulham, who are obviously lesser sides, he had the freedom of the pitch to to play his expansive passing game. And man, neither of those teams could get the ball off him, especially Fulham. In the second half of the Fulham game, when it was tight enough and it just would have taken half a chance. And even there was, you remember when the ball hit off Eric Bailly and it almost rolled in? You know, there were a couple of moments where Fulham maybe should have equalized. Ruben Loftus-Cheek had a gilt-edged chance. But Paul Pogba just, whenever he was on the ball, he just didn't let anyone take it off him. I mean, he was keeping it really well, and he was playing lovely passes. He was playing long passes, which killed time, and he just took his goal so well. It
okay.
was such a sweet strike, and he set it up for himself so well. And I'm a bit of a fan of Pogba.
What I want to say about Pogba, I'm not saying that he's been playing badly. I'm not saying that he's not been playing really, really well because he has been playing really well. But what he has been doing is he's been doing the bare minimum for the last few weeks. And because suddenly he's doing the bare minimum, he's now propelling Manchester United to the title and he's going to be the difference. And suddenly he's the best player in the Premier League. And I mean, everyone just needs to relax a little bit because he's even had a better season for Manchester United. I think, was it the first season under Jose Mourinho where he put up
In terms of his goals, I think it was Mourinho's last season at Manchester United where Pogba was
double
he
digit
was on
goals
penalties, but he scored double figures in the league. Yeah.
but he's suddenly he's doing exactly what Jorginho Wijnaldum has been doing for the last couple of years, and that's just completing passes and not giving the ball away and running around a little bit. The things that he hasn't been doing for the last few years, and he's being hailed as some sort of hero for it. Look, he scored a couple of good goals. Well, no, he scored one good goal, and he scored a deflected shot against Burnley. Look, it was a good technique for the volley, but it took a massive deflection and went through the keeper's legs. It was.
Do you know what it is? Is that Pogba has absolutely no interest in turning up for a team that's not going anywhere.
I
Especially in a league like the Premier League. Look at him for Juventus, who are serial Serie A winners and Coppa Italia winners. He was turning up for France, won the World Cup. He was turning up for Manchester United over the past few years, who are not even in the Champions League most seasons. I think it's only twice that they've competed in the Champions League since Sir Alex Ferguson left. It's obvious. There's a clear pattern. When things are going, he's a fair weather player, isn't he? He's a brilliant player, but he is a fair weather player. When things are going well, he's happy out and he's part of it. When things are not going well, he doesn't really have the desire to make things.
I think we've said this about him previously, that he obviously bounces off good quality players around him. And I think we said in actually one of our initial shows last year that Paul Pogba isn't the first piece of a jigsaw puzzle. You don't put him in the team and build a team around him. He's the final piece of a puzzle. You know, the same way that Mesut Ozil is. You
Exactly. Yeah, very similar. Yeah.
You can't put him in a bottom half of the table team and say, yeah, go out there and win us the game by yourself, because he's not going to carry the whole team on his back. But when everybody else is playing around him and other people are occupying space and creating space for him through good runs and through good passes or whatever it is, and he's afforded space and time on the ball, and he's got players making good runs around him and players communicating with him, and it's all other people are doing the work as well. That's when he can thrive. But again, he's just been he's performing at the same level as lots of other midfielders. Like I'd say Ike Gundogan is performing at a higher level than Paul Pogba at the moment, but he's not getting.
He's been phenomenal.
He's not getting the same media praise that Pogba is getting, because it obviously is just it's Paul Pogba, and he's a headline maker. Yeah, look, so I think that he has been performing at a high level, but I just feel like there's a lot of other players performing at the same level or a higher level, and straight away all the media attention goes to him because he is who he is. And I just think that people are getting a little bit carried away is all.
But it's the same when things aren't going their way, that the media attention is all about him. He's one of those headline players who just grabs attention more than the rest of the pack.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, look, obviously there was loads of other football on. There was a massive result in the Chelsea-Leicester game. We talked a lot about Chelsea last week, and we said that maybe, you know, they need a bit more time to get things right. There's a lot of new players adapting during the pandemic, and I do think there is stuff to be worried about there as well. They don't really seem to have a whole lot of direction, and obviously it's a massive win for Leicester. But we're rapidly running out of time here, Joe. So we're going to have to wrap it up. We are back on Monday, though. Obviously, we're going to review all the FA Cup games. That included that massive game, Liverpool and Manchester United, and we're going to have previews of all of the midweek games next week. Joe, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks, Rafe. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, as always, to smash a like on the video, share the content around, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thanks, guys.